This next piece was inspired by Bach's chorales. The way he harmonized for four voices was incredible. He could do it in his sleep, and I think virtually everything he wrote is worth studying, and I wish it had all been saved. When Bach wrote these chorales, he did it for four voices, and the four voices alone could describe chord voicings that I think still sound great today. One of the things about Bach's writing for chorales was his voice movement was oftentimes would use common notes. That is, in the first three chords we have a G, E minor to a C ninth, and so we're going to use the same three notes on top and just change the bass notes, and it's a very common procedure in pop music today still, and I think Bach should get some more credit. Anyway, so here, instead of playing parallel like G to E to C, we're going to use more common tones, as many common tones as possible. When I play this on the electric guitar with the tone control, I can't use my thumb and fingers. I need to sweep everything with a pick and then roll on the tone control. So I'm going to play it slightly different. I'm going to grab as many notes as I can, either 3 or 4, depending on the voicing. So strike each note with the pick and then roll on the tone control. That gives it a strange, almost like French horn in the distance quality. This piece is very classical sounding, and I recorded actually 4 voices, but it began as an instrumental guitar piece trying to imitate some of Bach's chorales and chorale voicings. It's called Omnis Morse Aequad. I'm not joking. Morse is spelled M-O-R-S in Latin, but oddly enough it means all things are equal in death. It's more optimistic piece of music than that, but check it out. The first chord, I'm playing a G major with root, 5th, and 10th. Strike all the strings. Make sure you deaden the B string with one of your fingers. Next is a E minor. In fact, you can play all 5 notes in this voice. Then go to the C ninth. Then a D. Or you can hit it with the low A. So I got a dead note on the A string and dead note on the G string. So I'm only getting 4 notes. Then A minor, just moving 1 note to a D minor 7, to an E. Back to G. Same voicing as the first chord, just up 3 frets to B flat. Another 10th in D minor. An F to a B flat. And an A minor to a F to a D minor, E minor. Different voice. All I'm doing is changing the top note of the E minor from a B to a G, then a D major. And the second time it's the exact same repeat, it just ends on A major for a more final sound. There's only a few different actual finger positions to play these. For instance, the G, B flat, D minor, all the same voicing as a 10th. But it's the way the bass line moves and against the melody that gives it sort of the characteristic sound. Also, depending on how your guitar and amp sound, you might want to change the voicings to different strings. For instance, I played the C ninth down here. You could also play it on the A string. It sounds a little bit more, well, less bassy. So down here. So just find a good spot. Like this may sound better up here, depending on your guitar. So move the voicing around, and I always change the fingering according to what sounds the best on the guitar and amp setting that I'm playing at the moment. Because if you one of the things that makes a guitar more difficult than other instruments is the fact that we can finger the same note so many different places. So you got this voicing for the G, this voice, this. Find the one that sounds best, that makes the most musical sense. Another thing that makes things sound more interesting on a guitar is to play them unguitaristically. For instance, this idea of the first 3 chords, the G, E minor, C, having the same top note, but the bass line keeps moving down. Another alternative fingering for doing it. You end up with bigger spreads. In fact, this is almost 2 octaves. So it makes it, well, more typical of what a chorale would have. The 4 voices move independently, and when you're arranging for a chorale, all you think about is what it's going to sound like. You don't really care how difficult it would be to play on any one instrument, since there's 4 different people singing it. It could be that you're like me and you were raised on rock and roll, where something like this would be a big change and a big difference from something you would normally play, which is all the more reason to do it. And for that reason, you might have to work a little bit to get a sound that complements these kind of chord voicings. I like to go for clean sound. If you have a compressor, now's the time to use it. Whereas with a distorted amp, you don't need a compressor because the amp's already doing that compression for you. Clean sound, a little bit of compressor. Use the bridge pickup and some nice long delay. Maybe in this case, I have 2 of them. They're almost the same length, but they're giving a staggered effect, and that gives the sound of air. I like the delays better than reverb because the reverb tends to make every single note sound distant, whereas with the delay, you can hear the straight sound better, to my ears anyway. One thing I do live is I control the delay volume with the volume pedal so that the dry sound never changes. But when I press down the pedal, I can get more delay for certain, for the end of a phrase. So the beginning of the phrase is more dry, and then at the end of the phrase, I can roll on the delay to give it the effect of being in a big room. But it's not always there for the entire phrase.